Hey guys, it's Cece, and today I am here to do a tag. So if you have read the title of this video, you probably already know that today I'm going to be doing the I Dare You book tag. I was tagged to do this video by Jane of the channel It's Jane Lindsay. Thank you so much to Jane for tagging me, and if you are not already subscribed to Jane, you should go do that. You should go and subscribe to Jane. Like many other people who have done this tag before me, I don't really know why it's called the I Dare You book tag. These are 19 questions just about books and reading in general, so that's pretty much it. I'm not gonna think about the title too much. We're just gonna jump in and answer some fun bookish questions. Question 1. What book has been on your shelf the longest? The book that I've actually owned the longest is really hard. I've been trying to think of books that would have been on my shelf in the first house that I lived in, and there are a few options, but honestly I don't know which of these has been on the absolute longest period of time. So a few of the books that could potentially be the one that has been on my shelf the longest, first of all, is Sorcery and Cecilia, or The Enchanted Chocolate Pot by Patricia C. Reed and Caroline Stevermer, which a friend gave me because my name is Cecilia. That friend kind of vanished from my life when I was a preteen, so this could have been given to me a lot longer before then. This might be that book. The Giver by Lois Lowry I have owned for an exceedingly long period of time. I think I would have originally read it in 6th grade, which is when a lot of people read The Giver. I don't know if I had it before then, but I've read it like 20 times, so I've owned it for a very long time. There's Serpent by K.L. Fogg. This was a gift, I think, on my 12th birthday. It should say in here. It doesn't. It just says happy birthday. I think this was given to me on my 12th birthday. It is signed. This is another one that I read over and over again when I was that age, so I'm not sure. Or possibly it was The Bad Beginning by Lemony Snicket. My mom had a box set of the first 3 books in the series that she was always trying to get me to read. Clearly I have read them since then, but this was around the same time. It could be any of those. I have no idea. Question 2. What is your current read, your last read, and the next book you're going to read? I'm currently reading like 4 books. I'm a mess. So physical books, I'm currently reading On the Edge of Gone by Corinne Dalvis, which I'm liking. I'm getting through it pretty fast. I'm also currently reading Release by Patrick Ness. I had to put this on hold so I could read this because I am buddy reading it with Dylan this weekend, so I had to put some other books on hold. I'm also reading 2 ebooks currently, The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert and a book called Alternative Remedies for Loss. I'm not currently remembering who wrote that book, but here's a picture. I'm currently reading that. I'm kind of a mess right now as far as currently reading. The last book I read was Akata Witch by Nnedi Okorafor, which I finished like the first day of February. And the next book I'm going to read is Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli. I'm going to be doing a reread of this before I go and see Love, Simon again, because I've already seen it, but I want to read this and then go see it 100 more times. Question 3. What book did everyone like but you hated? I've done so many variations on this question over the years. I guess for now, to stay relevant, we'll go with Ready Player One by Ernest Cline. At the time that I read it, there were not a lot of people saying that they didn't like it. It was a pretty hyped book, and I absolutely hated this book. Initially, I was kind of in middle ground about it, but the more and more I had men yelling at me that I was a terrible person and a bitch and more for not liking it, the more that I started to hate it. Now I am not in the minority. I think a lot more people are coming forward and being like, this book is really terrible, but at the time that I read it, yeah. There could not be a movie I am less excited for than Ready Player One. This book was so terrible. Question 4. What book do you keep telling yourself that you're going to read, but you probably won't? What book do I have on my TBR shelf right now that applies to? Probably Perfect 10 by Elle Phillips. I've had this for a very long time. Keep telling myself I'm going to read it, but it has real mediocre to terrible reviews across the board. So I just keep telling myself I'm going to read it, but it might not ever happen, I'll be honest. Question 5. What book are you saving for retirement? So I just thought real long and hard about this. There aren't a lot of books that I'm like, oh man, I'm not going to read that until I'm really old, because generally speaking, I don't care about classics, and those are the only books I would put off, even when I'm old. Probably still not going to be that invested in classics, but there is one that I read and enjoyed. So I would put off rereading The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas until retirement. When I originally read this book, it took me 7 months. but that was with like school and everything, so maybe someday when I'm old and I have nothing better to do, I will reread this book because I really enjoyed it. Question 6. Last page, do you read it first or wait until the end? So I absolutely wait until the end. I would never read the last page of a book first. That actually, the concept of doing that really stresses me out. I can't even visualize it. My grandma is one of the people who does this, and every time that she tells me she read the last page before she read the rest of the book, I get really stressed out for her. Yeah, I could never do it. Question 7. Acknowledgements. A waste of ink and paper or an interesting aside? I don't know if I've talked about this in a video before. I read everything that is in a book. So, dedication at the beginning, everything in the middle. I read the acknowledgements. If there's anything afterwards, like an interview with the author, I read everything cover to cover. So, I do not think acknowledgements are a waste of paper and ink. I, generally speaking, find them super interesting, and I like learning more about the author and the author's process. Question 8. Which book character would you like to swap places with? This is such a standard book tag question, and I never have a good answer for it because I think we all do the same thing where we're like, we read books about characters who are, generally speaking, put into terrible situations, are forced to endure terrible losses. They're sad people who take on way more than I could ever hope to take on. I could never handle anything as well as the characters in the books that I read, so that's why I think the answer to this question is always, I don't want to swap places with these characters. I don't want to go to Hogwarts. People die there all the time. Having said that, I think for this question I'm going to go with Monique from The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Monique is the narrator of this book, and I don't want to switch places with her because she has like a really unique perspective in this book that is what allows her to understand Evelyn as a character. She becomes a real go-getter type of character. She demands the things that she deserves, and she becomes really outspoken and impressive, and I just want to carry that energy. I don't want to swap places with Monique, but I want to carry that energy with me always. Question 9. Do you have a book that reminds you of something specific in your life, like a time, a place, or a person? Yes, so many. I think that I am a reader who really, like, catches on to the things that are happening around me, and I connect those experiences and those people with the books I'm reading, so I have so many of these. I'm not gonna grab them all off my shelf because then I'd have to take apart my shelf, but a few of those books are. Mockingjay by Suzanne Collins reminds me of my couch. I had recently moved into a new house. When the book came out, I went home, I sat on my couch, and I read it over 4 consecutive hours without moving. So I'll always associate Mockingjay with that couch and that living room. Alex Flynn's books, which are modern retellings of fairy tales, I will always associate with being in high school and with the friends that I had when I was in high school. The Chronicles of Narnia will always remind me of my mom. Chaos Walking will always remind me of my sophomore year dorm and the chairs that Janelle and I had set up in that room. I spent so much time reading on those chairs. Daughter of Smoke and Bone will always remind me of London because I read them while I was traveling in London. Fried Green Tomatoes will always remind me of Janelle. She was there with me when I read it, and she's also the person who recommended it to me. There are so many books. Question 10. Name a book you acquired in an interesting way. I don't think I've really acquired any books in an interesting way. Either I go out and buy them, they're given to me as a gift, or like a publishing company sends them to me. Don't really know if there's any other way that I get books, so I guess destination books would be my best answer for this. If I go on a trip, if I go somewhere special, I like to buy a book there. So books like Fangirl, I bought that at a charity shop while I was living in London. Same for Mr. Penumber's 24-hour bookstore. It wasn't a charity shop, it was a second-hand book stand in Cambridge. I bought one of my copies of A Series of Unfortunate Events book in Paris at Shakespeare & Company. There's a book called Daisy Fay and the Miracle Man by Fanny Flagg that I own, and I bought that at a bookshop in Salem. I like buying books when I go to destinations, so I don't know if it was interesting the way those books were acquired since I just paid for them with my own money, but they came from interesting places. Question 11. Have you ever given a book away for a special reason to a special person? Honestly, I don't think so. The only book I could think of to go with this was Princess Academy by Shannon Hale. So Princess Academy is the first book in a trilogy that I loved when I was younger, and when I was in high school, I dragged all of my friends and my sister to this big event where I got a bunch of books signed. While we were in line, my sister was feeling sad. She didn't have anything for any of the authors to sign, but she had read Princess Academy. And I had a bunch of other Shannon Hale books that I wanted her to sign, so at that time I gave my sister my copy of The Princess Academy so that she could still have a signed book by that author. I have since then obviously acquired my own copy of Princess Academy. I don't think this one is signed. Did I get to go see her again? No, this is actually, I think, my only Shannon Hale book that isn't signed. I have all of her books signed except this one, but I mean, I have all of them signed but this one, so at that time I gave Zoe this, and I think I also gave her my first copy of the first Fablehaven book by Brandon Mull, because he was there too. So I guess that, I don't know if that really counts, but that is someone who I have given books away to at that point. Yeah. Question 12. Which book has been with you most places? I'm going to go with two different versions of this question. The first one I'm going to say is been with you at like the most points in my life, and for that I'm going to say The Giver by Lois Lowry. I read it before I've read almost any other book that I love and that I consider a favorite, and I have reread it at almost every point in my life. As a postgraduate adult, it is probably time for me to revisit this one again, just re-experience it, but this has been with me at the most places in my life growing up. But a book that has been with me the most physical places, I'm going to go with The Bad Beginning or Orphans by Lemony Snicket. This is my alternate copy of the first book in the series of Unfortunate Events. I bought it at Shakespeare & Company in Paris. It then would have gone with me to Ireland and then back to the flat I was staying in London. It was in my suitcase when I traveled to Italy. It was in my suitcase when I flew back to New York, when I drove back to Pennsylvania, and now it lives with me in Utah, before it will eventually live with me somewhere else again. So this book has by far been with me the most physical places. Question 13. Any required reading that you hated in high school but wasn't so bad 2 years later? I was one of those kind of annoying kids in high school that actually really liked a lot of the required reading that we did. That was the kind of person I am. But a book that I didn't really love in high school, and then I read it again in a college class and actually really enjoyed it, was Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. In high school, I just thought it was kind of boring, and then when I reread it for a class in college, along with Janelle, I got a lot more out of it, and when I went to London, I wound up buying my own copy, which is Pulp the Classics. I love these editions of classic books. Comes with the colorful edges and the pulp covers. Yeah, when I wound up rereading it and loving it, I even wound up getting my own copy. Question 14, used or brand new? Both, I guess. I like brand new books. I think I read a lot more brand new books now than I used to, but I still love digging around a used bookstore and finding stuff that I want to read. Question 15, have you ever read a Dan Brown book? Kind of random. No, I have not ever read a Dan Brown book, and I don't really feel like I need to. Question 16, have you ever seen a movie that you liked more than the book? Absolutely. I think that this is probably a more common occurrence than people want to admit, I guess. I love Perks of Being a Wallflower as a movie more than I like the book. Fantastic Mr. Fox is a terrible book, but a wonderful movie. Big Fish is another great one. I love the Lord of the Rings movies, then I love the books. I think as far as Stephen King books go, I love The Green Mile as a book, but I like the movie more. I also like the movie Stand By Me more than I like the short story. There are a lot in the world, I think. We could probably acknowledge that more. There are some movies that just plain do it better. Question 17, have you ever read a book that has made you hungry, cookbooks included? I mean, I guess when I look in a cookbook I get hungry, but if we're going with things beyond that, I think I've read a couple. I remember the first Hunger Games making me hungry. Yes, laugh it up. So ironic, maha. But when Katniss goes to the Capitol and is eating all the food that's there, I remember being like, ooh, this all sounds really delicious, before you get into the, like, terrible undertones of that scene. Wild Beauty at times also made me really hungry. Whenever the big family meals would be described, I would get super hungry. Question 18, who is the person whose book advice you will always take? For this, I'm definitely gonna go with Janelle, my girlfriend. I really trust a lot of people on BookTube, but there are just too many differing opinions that happen, and I think that I have to kind of gauge how I feel with some people's reactions to books, but Janelle knows me really, really well, and if she ever kind of gives me a recommendation on a book, whether I will like it or won't like it, I really trust her perspective on that, so Janelle. And finally, question 19, is there a book that you read out of your comfort zone that you wound up really enjoying? Yes, absolutely. The first time I read Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn, that was basically the first thriller I had ever read. It's absolutely the first adult thriller I ever read, and it wound up really inspiring me to pursue more of those types of books. The Book Thief, I don't like historical fiction. I especially don't like war stories, but I wound up really liking the book Thief. Wild Beauty was out of my comfort zone. I don't read a lot of magical realism and wound up loving it. Fried Green Tomatoes, historical fiction, adult historical fiction, The Color Purple, which is adult historical fiction. All books that I have read and loved that were super outside of my comfort zone. And that is it, you guys. That is it for the I Dare You book tag. What did you think of this tag and my answers to it? Please let me know down in the comments below. How did you guys feel about required reading in high school? Did you like it? Were you against it? I'm curious. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in another video very soon. Bye!